Okay, so welcome to Learning Together. This is a series of interviews that we do where we showcase all of the creative and ingenious ways that our teaching and support staff have found to help support our students and their families while schools are closed during the shutdown due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So, you know, doing teaching in a virtual world has enough challenges of its own. But imagine a situation where you've got a large group of students who don't have a real good command of the English language, and how much an extra challenge that would pose in the way that you go about teaching those students, the way you go about supporting those students. But we've got a group with us here today who have, come up with a really good team approach and a way to help support those students and their families. They're all from Immaculate Conception Catholic Elementary School. So we're going to start just with some introductions here. We've got Peter Belcastro, who is a grade 5-6 split teacher. Hello, Peter.
Hi, Stephen. How are you?
Doing very well. Thanks for being here today. And from the ESL team, we have Gina Coach Emilio. Hello, Gina.
Hi, how are you?
Good. Did I say your name right?
Yes, you did.
I was stressing about that beforehand. Good. Okay.
No, A+.
And we've also got Emily Leung. Hello, Emily.
Hello. Hello.
Thanks for being here. And we've got Piero Becchetti. Hello, Piero.
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you for having us.
Thanks for being here. So I want to start with Peter. Peter, as we said, you've got a grade 5-6 split class. Describe the demographic makeup of your class and of your school.
So our school is very diverse. So within my classroom, I do have 18 students who fall under the ESL umbrella. So every day there are multiple challenges that we face to try to overcome that language barrier. And like I said previously, although language is a factor of learning, it definitely shouldn't be a barrier. So working alongside the in-school team, we work daily to try to implement a program that's meaningful and effective for their English development.
Okay, so if you can try to describe what the situation was like for people who aren't that familiar with how ESL teams operate in the context of working with a classroom teacher. How does that happen, or how did that happen prior to schools being closed down? What was that dynamic like?
So prior to schools being closed down, I worked very closely with my in-school team. So Mr. Becchetti, he supports my class directly. So we do work closely on a daily basis. So his role is obviously to provide in-class support, along with withdrawing some students to give them any additional support that they may need outside of the classroom. But the relationship is very close. It's pretty much a team effort all around throughout the whole school.
So if you've got students who are struggling with learning language and they're struggling to keep up in your class, they would be pulled out of your classroom perhaps for a little while, and they would get some more individualized one-on-one instruction with somebody like Mr. Becchetti.
Yes.
Okay, so let's talk now about how that has changed with schools closed, and how you're trying to replicate that support system in a virtual world. What does that look like?
So for myself, the greatest challenge that I faced as a classroom teacher was that whole independent transition. So Google Classroom was something that I used on a daily basis, as it's proven to be such an effective tool for learning. But with that being said, there has been ongoing difficulties in terms of navigation throughout the platform, finding specific assignments, searching for them, and submitting them for myself to assess. Along with that, I've recently noticed that something that I've been reflecting on daily is my delivery of instruction, because in class, the students are able to refer to me at any time to clarify anything that they may have difficulties with. But I quickly realized that it becomes more difficult when their support at home is working on their English proficiency as well. So it's all about reflecting on the communication they're giving to me on a daily basis with regards to the assignments that I post, to try to effectively simplify my instruction to make them start their assignments more independently and effectively.
Mm-hmm. And we had a conversation yesterday. We were talking a little bit about kind of the support that some of these kids are getting at home. Tell me about that.
So at home, so from the beginning, it was, how can I say this? Sorry, a collective effort. So we knew that there were specific groups of students who required who require ongoing support in class. So with that being said, because we knew of their specific struggles in terms of utilizing technology or whatever resources are provided to them, we knew that we had to make the initial contact. So what we did, as a team, we met beforehand to try to figure out how we would, continue to deliver our program effectively, but also create some, visual prompts to help them navigate through Google Classroom at home. And once we've discussed those things, we met with multiple families online via Google Meet. So what we did was our initial meet was to provide them with those visual prompts to help them navigate to their classroom, along with instruction on how to, open assignments and how to submit their work, basically. And it basically just gets the it makes the parents aware of what's expected of their, son or daughter as well. But this was also done with our settlement workers to provide, interpretation, to provide translating services while we did this together. So they've been a great help.
That was going to be my next question, if that required the support of a translator. So, Gina, I'd like to bring you into the conversation here then. So, obviously this required on your part, as an ESL teacher to kind of rethink the way that you delivered lessons, the way you provided support to your students. Can you tell me a little bit about, what some of the challenges were that you faced, and maybe how you came up with some workarounds to deal with those?
Sure. So what I really wanted to focus on was to make sure we were keeping the lessons accessible to the students. So trying to transfer the best practices from the classroom to this virtual platform was the biggest challenge, especially because I support primary. So my students especially were not well versed in using a Chromebook or a laptop, even typing skills. To focus on from the beginning was the Chrome extension read and write. So what I decided to do was create a video that would explain very simply how to use read and write and how to enable specific functions in read and write. So I did the video focused on using the dictionary, the picture dictionary, the vocabulary list, which includes the vocabulary word, an image, and a definition for the student. And then also implementing the talk and type. So students weren't using their two fingers to write their answers. They could use talk and type where they spoke their answer. I taught them how to end their sentence with proper punctuation. And then the other very important feature was the text reading. So teach them how to use read and write to allow the text to be read to them.
So when you're doing these sessions with the students, are you doing them in sort of a small group setting? Is it more one-on-one individual type instruction? How does that look?
So I meet with students on a daily basis through Google Meets, and it is a small group. So anywhere from 5 to 6 students at a time. So when I first started, I was trying to show them how to enable read and write, but I just felt like it wasn't working well enough, and that's why I created the video.
Okay. And do they typically have a translator there with them while you're delivering this instruction to them, or no?
No, they don't. That's why it has to stay. All the lessons have to remain very visual, very engaging, and very clear. So that's a best practice or best practices that we always use in the classroom, and we transfer that to this online learning platform.
Okay.
But I did have the read and write video translated into Arabic. Did that for us.
Okay, so I think you were going to show some examples. Would you mind sharing your screen and showing us what you've got?
Sure. Let's go into present mode. Okay, so this was the English version of the read and write video. I wanted it to be about 5 to 7 minutes long, but it ended up being 14 minutes. So I just start by introducing what the read and write bar looks like and how to enable read and write through the little purple puzzle piece. So this was a visual that I added in the video through Jamboard to connect the word to the symbol so students would know. So I'll just play a little snippet of that. Maybe we'll go back to that.
The joys of technology, right?
Yes. So this is the Arabic version.
Okay.
So after I explained the toolbar up here, so I connected the word dictionary to this picture of the book, picture dictionary to the mountain, pressing play, pause, stop, and then the headset with the mic for the talk and type. So this was actually an example of an activity that I converted from a screenshot to a Google Doc so that the students could enable read and write for both listening to the text being read to them and then stating their answers for the ones that couldn't type. So this is just a little example, hopefully it works, of Rama's translation. Okay, unfortunately, neither of those work. We'll try and come back to those.
Okay, that's fine. But suffice to say that so basically there's a description of what a tornado is, an
Yes.
image of what it looks like, and then an audio track in Arabic that goes along with there's a translation of the text that you had below.
Yes, that's right.
So they're reading it, they're learning to read it in English, but they're getting the Arabic so they understand what it means basically.
Exactly. And so Rama did a voiceover to some of the other ways that I tried to keep things engaging for the students was I really tried to think out of the box as to how I would present the theme of the week or vocabulary words of the week. So I did a couple of weather videos. So every Monday I send out Mrs. C's weather report video. So I'll show you one on a rainy day. We'll see if it works.
Good morning, friends from ICS. This is Mrs. C reporting live here from Windsor, Ontario. It is April, and we all know that April showers bring May flowers. Well, hopefully, anyway. Friends, this week I want you to focus on a few vocabulary words that we're going to use in some writing activities. So, if you look at the 6 words that I have here, we have rain, showers, flowers, umbrella, April, and May. Stay tuned for instructions on what to do with these April words.
That's
So
awesome. Good on you.
So
that was great.
Well, that was, it was not actually a rainy day. My husband was videotaping me and spraying me with the hose, which he didn't mind, I have to say. And then the following week, I did one with the leaf blower to create lots of wind. And the theme was windy weather in spring. So that's how I kind of introduced the theme. And then I would do a read aloud with the students. So I would find one on YouTube. This one happened to be A Windy Day in Spring by Charles Ginga. So I'll just show you the front page there, A Windy Day in Spring. And then on that same day, so at the beginning of the week when I'm introducing vocabulary, I would send them some sort of activity to explore those vocabulary words, the meaning of them, how to say them, how to break them down, any rules that they should learn, like the super E for the word kite that you're seeing right there. So for each word, there's a mat, and this was copied to each student. So for each word, there's a mat that has a picture, so showers, and there's a picture of a rain cloud, then an audio, so they can hear the word, and then letter tiles beneath it. So all the students have to do is click on the letter that they want to move to spell the word. So that I already did this one. This was the example. So I created the word showers. Then the next word, warm, and they would have to spell it. And I believe there were 9 or 10 words for the week this week. So for words like bumblebee, there's 3 E's and 3 B's for letter tiles so that they won't run out. And then there's the image again.
And then a little audio track there too, so that they can hear the proper pronunciation.
Yes. So I try and add the audio as much as possible so that they can hear it as well as the picture. So we're making it very visual. And then as an extension activity, so this would be how they are introduced to a topic, they explore the vocab words. Then I would go into sentence writing or some sort of exploration with writing. So this is done in a Google slide. So it's an image imported as the background, and then I add text boxes for them to finish the sentence. So this was a spring sentence writing activity where there were sentence starters. This is one of my students who's in grade 1. Actually, he did really well with this. So when I stepped in a puddle, and what's cool about this is for their answer, they can enable read and write. So let's see if that works.
I made a big splash, splish, splash.
So that was his answer. Now my feedback to him would be to add punctuation. He only added punctuation to one of the sentences, I believe. And I'm sure you noticed that the speech was very slow because I went into settings in read and write and made it slower so that the student would be able to really hear it. So that would be an example of an extension activity that.
And how would you be doing this like prior to school closures? Would you incorporate this technology into your sessions with students, or would you be doing a lot of this stuff just with pen and paper?
We used a lot of center type activities, but it wouldn't be on the computer. There was very little done on computers, especially with my primary students. It would be like word cards that they would manipulate to create the sentence. So we would find different creative ways in the classroom. So this was not only a learning curve for our students, but also for ourselves as teachers, which I'm sure everyone here would agree. But I keep saying that I'm going to incorporate so many of these pieces of technology into the classroom when we go back, hopefully sooner rather than later.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they're going to become accustomed to it very quickly, right?
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. Okay, so at this point, I'd like to bring, if you can go back out of the share mode, Gina, I'd like to bring Emily in here now. We talked yesterday, Emily, you were suggesting that you had some embedded lessons. I believe it was some video and some audio pieces that you wanted to share as well.
Yes. So I'm going to press present.
Maybe while you're doing that, Emily, just to preface what you're going to show us here, can you tell us just a little bit more about your role, who some of the students are that you work with, and kind of what your goals are with them?
Yes. So I work with the grade 6, 7s, and 8s in our at ICS, the demographics of my students evolve from very newcomers to ones who have been here for a while as well. So the lesson that I'm going to show you today is something that I'm working with some of my earlier ESL students. I've been using a Scholastic website, which has offered some free digital books for reading. So we do a lot of shared reading to help them learn vocabulary. And I try to mimic that form of a lesson through the Google platform. So for my students, I tried to communicate their lessons as visually as possible. I created like lesson slides, and with their lessons and activity laid out as step-by-step fashion in the Google Slides. And then accompanying these slides, I'll I include a video, an introductory video where I introduce what our focus is and also like how-tos in navigating the websites that we may be using. And I've also separated my lessons into chunks, kind of like how my lessons would progress at school. So just to show you this slide here, this says day 3. So it would be one of the lessons that I would be covering on the 3rd day with the students. So the lesson slides start with a picture of the book cover, and this is so that I'm trying to provide a visual for them to reference when they look up the book on the website, and then following that is the lesson progression written out, and I tried to word it short and simply so it's easy for the students to decode. I've also embedded instructions with audio to help them. And in later lessons, I've started using translation tools to help communicate the lesson to parents. So after following the lesson, the instructions, I include vocabulary charts of words or phrases that we'd be focusing on in the text that we're going to read. So for instance, this one here would say chew wood or footprint. And so that this gives them a frame of reference as they're studying the words, as they read the text, and also as they're doing their activity. If they need to reference a specific phrase or a word, it's right here in the slides at their fingertips. And then lastly, I show them the activity I'd like them to try. And again, I try to chunk my instructions, and I also embed the audio for them to listen to if they have a hard time decoding the instructions. So this has been a work in progress, as I've had to learn a lot of technology that previously I was not familiar with. In school, as ELL teachers, we try to provide a lot of oral and visual items for our students to learn. So here in the Google platform, I'm trying to project that through the video, the visual charts, and the embedded audio, and the use of translation tools.
Yeah. And so what about, Emily, what about just in terms of monitoring the progress with what you've created here? Is there a way for you to measure comprehension that would, you understand if they're actually getting it?
Yes. So many times students, as they work through the lessons, when they run through some difficulty, they'll email me, and we set up a Google Meet, and we meet together to discuss what their difficulties are, and we work through the questions. Sometimes students will ask if it's possible for a friend to meet with them, and together they translate for each other as we work through the activities.
Very good. Okay, if I could just ask you to stop sharing now, Emily, and I want to bring Piero into the conversation here. Piero, when we spoke a little bit yesterday, we were talking about a website that you've used in your support programs that you've become particularly fond of. I just wondered if you can, first of all, just maybe tell us a little bit about what you do, what your role is, and kind of the students you support, and what the tools are that you're using to help them.
Sure. Well, similar to my colleagues, similar students range from newcomers to more proficient or aging between, or the grades between 3 and 6. So it's kind of a new role where they may not be the strongest and they're not the weakest. So it's kind of a on the fence kind of thing where they can read, but they need support, they need guidance, but you don't want to let them go because there are still gaps. I was lucky enough at some point, there were some attendance issues with some of my groups, and this site, Unite for Literacy, that I am fond of, provided that that replacement of the classroom presence, so to speak. And I said, maybe this could be something in the future that I could use in case there are more attendance issues with certain students. And lo and behold, now we have this opportunity where we have virtual learning, distance learning. And I said, thank goodness, because it would have been a little bit of a struggle for me to promote reading, because many of them, if they see a chapter book, oh, it's a great cover, they'll flip through it and then it ends there. But if I can quickly go through what it looks like, I kind of call it the book version of Netflix. And as soon as you can imagine that screen, the appeal would be there. So I'll go to presentation mode.
Okay.
Perfectly. Okay, so like I was saying, for this 400 books for students to choose from. And the reason why I call it the book version for Netflix is because the way that they're using Netflix at home and using this platform, you could easily see they can scroll down, and on top you'll see the categories, right? So animals here, animals and people, community, create and play, etc., etc. But the most interesting feature to this site is the ability to change the narration. In other words, the written formats are offered in English and Spanish, right? Dual language. And then what you hear, you have an option of 14 languages. So in this case, let's say it's Arabic. We're using one for our students. Okay. And there was one book that Peter had done with a newcomer under healthy, I believe. Let's see here. Okay, go back here one second. Okay, so Peter had done this book here and created activities along with it. But just to give you an idea what the dual language book allows for students.
Wash your hands. That seems like a very topical, relevant one for the times, right?
Right. So it was just to kick off this topic, especially during this time. So you have the English, of course. Okay, so and then the Arabic. Can we hear the Arabic or no?
No, I'm not hearing it, but I think it might be having some connection problems. But I get the idea, Piero. So basically, it's just like a flip book to go through.
Yeah, a flip book, and then at the end, it'll also offer activities that they can use. Right. Now, the most challenging, Stephen, was because there are 400 books. These are varying levels, right? So what I did was I read them all, and it took weeks. And I ended up putting them on a spreadsheet that looks something like this. Next screen.
Just a question about the site, Piero. Is it a subscription-based site?
Oh, by the way, it is a free site, and that's one.
It is free.
One huge perk that the students liked. So as soon as they log on, they're like, "Wow, this is all for free." So that was a huge factor. So what I've done is I basically categorize them, and each student would have a copy of this. So they would have the levels 1 to 6 in this column that I ranked. So if it was a beginner book, like a beginner student, say grade 1 or a step 1, they would feel most comfortable on the ones that I ranked as, right? And then of course I would be dating them, and then I would give them opportunities to practice their fluency and pronunciation, comprehension, and then they would move on. I would rank them level 1, 2, 3, 4, just to give me an
So it just
idea.
in terms of,
and then after about a month, or I would.
sorry, in terms of what that support looks like, Piero, then you would would you give them the assignment? They would be required to read a book, and then you would have individualized kind of follow-up sessions with each one of those students to check how they're doing, how they're progressing with reading that book.
Yeah, so, exactly the point is, now what do we do with this book, right? This book that was test run in my class, as far as how many times they need to read this book, because sometimes they wanted to hear their first language, right, the Arabic, and other times, you know what, sir, I can just do the English now. And some would read it after one time, and then I would ask them comprehension questions, and then like, oh no, that's not what it was about, right? Read it again. And so the rule came that it was between 6 and 9 times that they had to actually read this book. Now, when I talk about reading, we're actually talking about the student listening to the story first, right? Doing that picture walk, and then listening to the reading the author, and then followed by a reading. So they're going to be trying to read the words while they're listening to the text. And then on the third time, you have to just read it independently. And so to across that, in the most simple form, these little task cards were created. And then the questions for comprehension, Stephen, were these: 5 things you learned, so really 5 facts, but 5 things you learned, or do a summary of with a nonfiction or fiction. They can do this sure that there is a beginning, middle, and end to their retell. Of course, and then to involve the parents. Some of the kids said, sir, you know, my parents really like to read the book in Arabic. And then I want to ask me questions, but sometimes I didn't, you know, read the English. So then the Arabic was created here. And then a few students of mine are Spanish, the Spanish version, the Chinese version, and a couple others. We have the Portuguese and then Turkish. So these would be little task cards that I would put in their folder. And then they would have that spreadsheet in that folder. And of course, they would be tracked. And then I would, according to the level of proficiency that I believe that they fell into. So that seems to be that of a program that could be done at home, school, or at school. But the most important, Stephen, was the engagement part. So it had to be done every day. So I started with a book a day. We did some math with the kids there, and I said, so some kids, I read 5 books like tonight or last night, and tonight I'm going to read 5 more. You know, so I said, well, look, by the time it's you would have read 350 books. You know, and well, how many more? You know, so that was the excitement part, the motivation factor. And then, of course, there are some rewards for them. Once a month, we draw names from each group, and then in the end, I ensure that all students receive reward.
All right, you're kind of breaking up there, Piero. I wonder if I can ask you just to stop sharing your screen there. I guess we're getting close to wrapping this thing up here. I wanted to you know, try to get a sense from the people who are on the line with us here today. You know, how you think this is working. I mean, I understand that there's obviously some limitations, that, you know, the best case scenario is to be in your classroom with your kids, but, you know, given the limitations, how do you feel your kids are progressing? And maybe I'll start with Peter. What do you think, Peter?
For the most part, my students, they've been pretty receptive, because my priority was to maintain that sense of, you know, regularity. You know, so basically what they're familiar with every day, I wanted to bring that onto the virtual platform. So what we've done as a group, and I'm just wondering, Stephen, could I try to share my screen with you to show you?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, sorry. Okay, let me just try that real quick. Okay, let's see if that works. All right, are we able to see my learning at home plan?
See it, yep.
Okay, perfect. So just as just a quick explanation. So prior to implementing our program, you know, as a group, we just we discussed what our week would look like. So with regards to those visual references, like including, you know, documented tools such as like our classroom schedule that has the daily routines, we wanted to replicate that. So basically what the students would see here, they would see our week at a glance. And just to quickly explain, you know, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, those are days that they know are dedicated to literacy and math. Tuesdays, they would have health and religion. Thursdays are dedicated either to science or social studies along with French. And this was, again, just to stress or just to continue that, you know, routine concept at home. But what we found was also crucial was to have it, I'm just going to switch my tab here, have that translated in Arabic. And can you guys see that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, so this was something that we translated in Arabic as well. And this was mainly for, you know, our Arabic speaking families. I know in my class, all of my English language learners are from Arabic speaking families. So this was something to provide, you know, the parents with so that they're able to understand expectations and, you know, they're made aware of what is expected to them for their son or daughter during the week. Also looking at this, and I'm just going to branch off with what Piero was saying about Unite for Literacy, if that's okay.
Sure.
Yep, so this, I'm just going to scroll on top. So prior to implementing our learning program, so these are some visual prompts that we made for our students to help them navigate. So when we met on Google Meet, I sent these to our interpreters so that when we're explaining when we're explaining how to navigate to the students, they're able to see what we see as well. So just to quickly add, so because we're not in the classroom, this was something provided to the family. So this was presented to a specific family whose son is in my class, and he's at his early stages of English development. So this was something crucial for his success. So it just shows, and I'll scroll down real quick. So as soon as he logs onto Classroom, you see my class that he would click, and basically step by step. So we're navigating him to look at the classwork tab on top, which would bring him to all the classwork. And basically, like as everybody who uses Google Classroom is familiar with, to the left side of the screen, you would see you know, various topic folders that contain subject-specific content. And what we did, because we thought it was effective, was create individual folders for specific students who we, you know, thought would have issues navigating. So once they click their name, and there's one right under that highlighted area, it would bring them directly to their specific folder where all their work is housed under one area, just to keep it, you know, consistent and easy for them to access. And what was important here was to stress the importance of, you know, the concept of scrolling down, because I'm sure a lot of people can relate. A lot of them, they tend to just focus on the first thing that they see, and what was important was to explain to them that there are multiple things that could be presented to them on a daily basis. So showing them how to navigate those new assignments. And obviously when they click on those assignments, we navigate them to the instruction tab, which would bring them here. So I'll give a quick example of how I used Unite for Literacy with my students. Am I okay to do that, Stephen?
Sure, go ahead. Yep.
Yep. Okay. So so I'm going to transition right to my Google Classroom. So this particular student, he is at the early stages of his English development. So Unite for Literacy was a great resource that I have been using in class right when Piero introduced it to me. So basically for himself, along with my other students, instructions are given both in English and in Arabic. And again, the Arabic instructions are for, you know, for the parents at home so that they're able to support their child while they're, you know, completing whatever assignment they're working on. So the link is, sorry.
Just about in terms of how that fits into the context of your overall schedule that you started. So is there an expectation that, you know, for each one of those subjects at the beginning of the day there, they would go on and work independently with these assignments, and then at 2:30 when you have your daily meetings with them, you'll go back for supplemental, perhaps some additional instruction and support and feedback? Is that kind of the way it works?
Exactly. So that's the kind of the main idea. So with that being said, I always like to give them the opportunity to, you know, try to work on their work on their own. But at the end of the day, you know, that daily presence is important because there's so many things that they need, you know, clarification on, which is obviously normal in that environment. But I'm just going to click on this link over here. So for example, sticking with that same book, For this particular student, because he's at the early stages of English development, reading and vocabulary is something that I want to be able to continue to provide to him on a daily basis. So I won't go through the book because Pierre already showed us what it entails. So obviously he's directed to the text that's provided to him, and the English and Arabic options are already programmed so that he's able to attempt to read it independently, along with checking for checking over the words by using the English tab and the Arabic tab when checking for understanding. And it's also a great way to for parents to get involved as well when reading together. So after this particular student is done reading, the next instruction is to open up the attached Google Doc that I gave to him. So when I open that, and it is a completed doc, and I'll just real quickly guide you through like what we've done here. So just to explain, because like I said, reading and vocabulary is something that I want them to continue working on every day. From the text, I provide them with a series of words, vocabulary words from the text, and I have them type them out 5 times each, as you see here, like he did already. And again, instructions are given in English and in Arabic so that parents are able to help them with this. So with that being said, this is something that we've done, that we do in class. So for example, we do it on paper as well, along with on our Google Docs, but it's also encouraged that they do continue to try practicing writing at home. But even if they can't, for whatever the reason, everything is here for them. And with that being said, to even practice on sentence fluency, I selected a few sentences from the book that they're able to copy again. And what's unique here, just to limit the amount of steps that it takes to get this to me to assess it, like everyone's familiar with, I obviously, I enabled the editing mode directly to the student's work so that they're able to open up the assignment directly, type their words out, type their sentences, and close it. And they're basically able to know that the work was given to me right away, because like I said, there's that issue with navigation and uploading and submitting assignments. So that was a feature that, that was crucial for their success as well.
That's very cool. Excellent. So I wanted to bring Emily and Gina back into the conversation. And so Emily, what kind of feedback have you been getting from your students? Do you, and what are you seeing? Do you feel like they're still progressing as they ought to be?
There are some difficulties in getting a grasp, not seeing them face to face in the school every day. But for those who, when they submit their assignments or when we're Google meeting, I do get a sense that they are trying their best, but sometimes there are some barriers, and things like Google Translate, things that we would normally, when we're working with our students, we would be reminding them on the side, oh, don't forget to use the computer to help you read this, or don't forget to use this tool that we've talked about earlier. That reminder piece isn't there. So I do see that. I try to, by providing embedded video or embedded audio, I'm trying to help them kind of like skip a step so that they don't meet that level of frustration that they wouldn't want to continue with the lessons that we've provided. But yes, that's one of the things that I've seen that I wish we continue to work on, trying to help them get a grasp on.
Yeah, well, I mean, hopefully this will all be over soon, and we'll be back in the classroom, and you can clear that hurdle then. How about you, Gina? What have you been seeing?
What I notice with my students, because I have the primary group, I think that what's most important to them is the Google Meet session. So at the beginning of the week or day, whatever day it is that I am working with a particular group, I send them their activities, but then through Google Meet and through the presentation mode, I go through exactly what they're going to see and what they're going to do. So I model it first. Because the kids are young, I can't just say, okay, your assignment's been posted, go to it. I have to literally hold their hand and walk them through each step of the way. Like Emily said, the students are eager. They want to learn. They want to be doing the activities. They want to see their teachers. And we know the students so well. So there were even a couple students who I were on my Google Meets and were engaged and excited, but they weren't turning in their assignment. So it's constantly troubleshooting. Okay, the next time I had a Google Meet, talk to the students. Why aren't you turning them in, friends? I know you're doing them. I know you're excited. And they thought, some of them thought they were, some of them didn't know how. So it's constantly trying to troubleshoot and figure out what is going to work best for the students. I find that the face-to-face time with students is the most valuable. So when we are explaining things and demonstrating things and showing things for this primary group that I work with, that's what's having the most effect for their learning.
Mhm. Mhm. And Piero, based on your comments, it sounded like you pretty pleased with the progress that you're seeing from your kids so far.
Yes, I think the key is, and of course, I realized over time. I was sending out a lesson plan, a lesson, and in that delivery, I was getting the same students responding, and I said, "Well, what happened to the other 15, and why am I getting more response?" And I said, "Wait a second, let me see." So thinking back, and I was a firm believer of MI, multiple intelligences, and I said, perhaps if I vary the material and I ergonomically get down to the level of, okay, for the lens of the student, what are they expecting? What would motivate them? So I thought, okay, well, we have singers and dancers that, they love to do that. So perhaps I can create a lesson that involves music. And others like the hands-on and tactile. So perhaps they want to create things, but I would have to make that in the form of a procedural text. Some like the mystery, right? Would have to create the mystery story. So all these little kind of experiments that I was doing over the past month, I'm getting, well, wait a second, I haven't heard from this person. And it wasn't until the very end, I'm like, wait a second, I just need to vary my material presentation and to tap into the different learners. So it was really kind of a, just a matter of how do I get them all participating. And I think the key is going to be a choice board. So if I make it into a quadrant, and I appeal to the auditory visual through Unite Literacy, there'll be a hands-on approach. In the other quadrant, the other one will be kind of a musical. Right? So then as soon as I get them working with their intelligences and the confidence level goes up, motivation goes up, then I think we can start drawing into it. So the weaker, say the intelligences that perhaps maybe they weren't the hands-on, but they thought, wait a second, I like making slime, and this time I don't have to use borax, I just use 2 ingredients. And so believing in themselves and probably experimenting, and of course positive, like you can do it, right? Share your video with us, or share some pics, and almost like it has to be in that personal level, which has been a challenge. But like the rest of my colleagues there, that Google Meet and just being there, tapping into their learning styles seem to be key for me.
Yeah. All right. Well, listen, folks, I think we're going to wrap this up. This has been a really, really interesting conversation, a unique challenge that you have to try and help these kids. And it sounds like, despite some limitations, some challenges that you have to deal with just with the technology and not being there with them, it sounds like you're still making a lot of progress. So good on you. You seem like a really good, dedicated group who are putting in a lot of extra time and doing some great work. So thanks for everything you do. Thanks for being here today, and keep up the great work.
Thank you for having us. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Well, take care, guys. We'll talk to you another time.
Okay, take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.